Hey there, and welcome to the Food as Medicine show with Dr. Ann, the place to be for real talk with real people and real results so you can heal yourself naturally. I'm your host, Dr. Ann, and I'm a board-certified pharmacist and health coach specializing in treating cholesterol without medications. You can learn more about me at drann.com, spelled A-N-H as in home. I always spell it out because people usually forget the silent H at the end, and I want you to be able to find me. It's TGI Friday! And a big shout out to V. Koopa, Lisa Berner, Francisco, Dr. B-Law, and Jeremy Montoya for leaving a review of the Food as Medicine show. We appreciate the feedback and we appreciate you for tuning in. Remember to subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode. After today's episode, take a minute to leave a review in iTunes by searching for the Food as Medicine show. Tell us what you liked, tell us what you didn't like, let us know what you think, and tell us where you're from so we can give you a shout out. 1 or 2 sentences will be fine, and it helps us improve the show. I want to let you know that the opinions expressed on this show may not represent my opinions, and the show is for general information only, not a substitute for medical care. So prior to beginning any new health program, I recommend you consult with a qualified health professional. In the last episode, Dr. Collins and I talked about how to eat to improve thyroid and adrenal function, so remember to check out that episode. And I'll also refer you to that episode for his bio. In today's episode, we talk about the sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, and we talk a little bit about libido, so consider this your advance warning in case you have kids around. We talk about how to compare blood and saliva test results and how to interpret the results to measure progress. We talk about soy and other foods that you can eat to help with hot flashes, night sweats, and mood changes during menopause. We also talk about which foods and supplements to help your body make its own chemotherapy, and much more. So let's go hang out with Dr. Collins. When you measure hormones, do you use blood or saliva tests?
I will use either blood or saliva, but I understand that blood has its limitations, so I have to order them a certain way to make them work properly. And I understand saliva has significant limitations, so they have to be ordered properly. Like when I order lab tests from the blood, which many people like because insurance pays for it, the blood test has to, of course, include estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, all 3, otherwise you're wasting your time because they all affect each other. And I like to have to look at sex hormone and binding globulin. You know the initials SHBG. That's a protein in the blood that carries these hormones around. And if it's too high, then you can have, quote, normal testosterone, but it doesn't work because SHBG kind of holds on to it and doesn't let it get to your cells. And then, of course, I have to deal with that and find out why it's elevated and stuff like that. So, knowing how to use the test is important, measuring all 3 of them plus that when we're dealing with sex hormones. In saliva, and the research goes back for this for an awful long time, since the 70s, actually, mid-70s, you need to do multiple samples. Like, the hormones fluctuate quite a bit in saliva, much more than in serum. Serum, that protein keeps them kind of steady. It's called steady state. Remember that term from pharmacology class, Yeah. Without these states, saliva bounces up and down. And so if I check your saliva on one day and I make a decision on that, I'm doing you a great disservice because all the research shows that your hormones are going to fluctuate from day to day. So I measure 3 days, and then I can show you how much they fluctuate. The degree of fluctuation shows you the degree of stress that you're feeling and the degree of instability, and that's valuable information. And then, of course, I can take the average and say, well, on average, you're making enough testosterone, but those levels are bouncing all over the place, which means your body is, really not doing well. And the patient goes, tell me about it. Because they usually feel miserable, even though they quote normal, But again, if I just measured one day, I may say they're high or low or normal. 3 samples is the minimum to get accurate saliva testing, 3 different days. So that's one of the things I'm a strong proponent of, even though commercially a lot of people sell like 1-day saliva test, which is basically clinically worthless based upon published literature.
Oh,
so
okay.
stuff I do is a little controversial, a little different. than other practitioners. But I really go by what the research is telling us and try to make sure that my patients understand the facts. And then when we get the right information, we have much better results than try to make a decision based upon partial information. Just bits of information.
That's interesting you say that, because our current pharmacy sells those saliva tests that are a one-day saliva test. You take multiple samples throughout the day, but it's only for just the one, not the 3-day period.
Okay, now that may be that will work for the adrenal test. Okay. Like the reason, well, kind of. There's a debate now going on in the literature. If you're going to measure cortisol, you want to measure it at least 4 times throughout the day. You can show morning, afternoon, evening, and bedtime. Now that can be helpful one day, but then again, there's a lot of research talk about day-to-day variations of cortisol as well, which basically says that the degree of stress that your adrenal glands are undergoing will be more well defined by me checking your cortisol on 3 different mornings than checking it multiple times throughout the day. But you have to realize this industry is still evolving, and many companies are invested in the lab tests that they put out there, decades ago when we didn't understand this now, and many of them are shy to shift and go, oh, by the way, we've been selling you a lab test that's not the best. Of course, that's my opinion. A little controversial, but if you look at my website, you see I only sell one test for females that does multiple samples, and I haven't gotten into the cortisol test yet because I want to make sure that we have enough research to kind of make sure we make the right decision. But the international literature is very clear. People can go to PubMed and type day-to-day and then cortisol, and you'll see lots of papers talk about the variation. And it's kind of unfortunate. But as you and I both know, healthcare is evolving, it's changing. And I think that, even in natural medicine sometimes we lag a little bit behind. And we need to be honest with ourselves and say that. And that's one of the areas that we're lagging behind on is proper use of saliva testing.
You mentioned that it's about the business interests of these companies and not necessarily what's best for the patient. And I agree with you. It's okay to go against the grain if it's evidence-based and it works. It's providing outcomes for your patients. I don't think that should be a problem.
Right. So, and I know it's controversial to bring this was not expected to talk, but the reality is I could have sold thousands of those, single-day adrenal tests, but my conscience won't let me. I just don't feel comfortable doing it. So, I'm waiting to see a little more research come out, and then I'm going to make a decision on. Then I'll make a step back into the marketplace and see what happens.
Yeah. Can you interchange the results of a blood test versus a saliva test, or they're completely different?
Now, that's a good question. One of the things is in a way, yes, but I could tell you how to do it real quickly is, like, for instance, when I work at saliva labs throughout the country, when we set up these programs, we would take patients and take their blood and the saliva at the same time, and you create a graft, with saliva on the x-axis and, serum on the y-axis, and you could actually test them both, and you could draw a line to show that they did correlate. As you've seen those graphs, you can draw a nice, clear, straight line. You can say, oh, they're both kind of, these people have low hormones and these have high. And in those people with low salival hormones, they also have low blood hormones. And those with high salival hormones, they also have high, blood hormones. So, yes, you can do that as far as in the clinical laboratory with statistical analysis, stuff like that. But an easy way to do it, if you're at home and you go, well, I got saliva tests, a few months ago, then I got a blood test. How do I compare them? Is look at where they are in the reference range, what percent. Just do the basic math and, basically say, well, this one's in the 50th percentile. It's right in the middle. Or is it in the 10th percentile? Is it like barely in the normal range, or is it the 90th percentile? I sure have lots of testosterone, And then what you can do is you can take the saliva and you can say, okay, my saliva shows I'm in the 20th percentile, and then I start to, exercise more, and I lost a little bit of weight, and I'm sleeping again because sleep deprivation is the best way to ruin all of your hormones, You don't sleep, all your hormones get messed up, all right? And so the person's doing this, then they go back to the other doctor months later, does a blood test, and they do the blood test, and it shows that the hormones are now like in the 60th percentile. Well, that's what helps, because you can't compare the saliva number exactly with the blood number, but look at the percentiles, and you can actually use that clinically in the real world. And I do that all the time when people bring me, you'd be surprised, different lab tests from different labs and all this stuff, and I just go, well, let's do the percentile analysis. And that's what I use in the lab tests I design, and that's what I teach doctors around the now the world about how to analyze tests. Learn percentile analysis, and you can interpret any test more effectively, even if you're looking at any test, not just hormones, cholesterol, anything.
Yeah, that saves the patient money. Like, they don't have to go out and do another test just because you're not able to compare the two results.
Exactly, and more importantly, it helps them understand, wow, I used to only be in the 10th percentile, now I'm in the 60th. This is exciting. But, if you look at a number and go, well, I used to be 14, now it's 20, now it's like 18 and a half, and what does that mean? Well, one was saliva, and, those numbers don't mean anything. You have to look at the percentile, then you go, wow, it's exciting,
Right. Okay.
So let's jump into the individual hormones, and let's start with estrogen.
Can you talk a little bit about soy and the effect of phytoestrogen?
Well, many times when women go through perimenopause and they want to, use a phytoestrogen to help them feel better. A phytoestrogen, phyto means plant, and estrogen, so what of interest, even plants have molecules that, that can affect our receptors, not just the animals, which is interesting. So phytoestrogens are plant molecules that will actually talk to our estrogen receptors. Those little doorways on our cells that are screaming, give me estrogen, give me estrogen. The plants will actually go to that doorway and say, okay, here, calm down, Now, they're not going to be as intense as the full hormone. The full hormone is going to go inside the DNA and cause a lot more changes, but the phytoestrogens may at least calm down the body so it quits yelling and having hot flashes and night sweats and mood changes. That's what phytoestrogens can do. But the problem is we need to have more choice than just soy. Some people are allergic to it. Unfortunately, as you're probably aware, soy is on like the top 10 of foods likely to cause allergies. It's right up there pretty close to dairy, so it's a good food, but some people become allergic to it, especially if they, eat it every day. So I say you can have soy a few times a week, but if they can't have that, it's good to understand that there are other foods that have phytoestrogen properties, foods that can also go to the cell and calm it down so they don't have as many hot flashes and night sweats. Of interest, I'm thinking right now of this one paper I read that even women who ate whole grain bread, like whole wheat bread versus white bread, they found out they have a statistically lot lower amount of hot flashes and night sweats. And that's an old paper, but fast forward, we now see that wheat is one of the grains that has like phytoestrogen properties. In fact, oats as well, rice, brown rice actually, barley, all these different grains have like these phytoestrogen properties that can stabilize the receptors and make the body not have as much vasomotor symptoms. So, but in addition to just the grains, a lot of fruits and vegetables, we're really pushing fruits and vegetables today, aren't we? Have phytoestrogen properties that can help, like apples, cherries, olives, plums. Those are really good fruits apparently and quite tasty. Remember the cabbage family? One reason I don't want to quit eating them altogether is because broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, and cabbage all can also have some phytoestrogen properties and help control vasomotor. What's interesting is those same vegetables also help get rid of toxic estrogen. So there's a lot of reason to use them every other day, but not every day. Other vegetables such as eggplants, tomatoes, garlic, onions, potatoes, carrots and yams, all these things can help the body be more stable. If you eat whole foods with vegetables and fruits in them, you're going to have a lower incidence, if any, of hot flashes and night sweats. In addition to the grains, there's all the different legumes. Soy is not the only bean that has phytoestrogens. Even peanuts, which, as you know, in the same family, and peas and garbanzo beans, those also have documented properties to help stabilize vasomotor symptoms. And then we talked about culinary herbs used in cooking a little while ago. Well, some of the other herbs you can use would be like fennel or licorice or parsley, sage, oregano. This sage again, that guy's everywhere, huh? And even like thyme and turmeric, those also have the ability to give the body phytoestrogens and control excessive and to help calm down the vasomotor symptoms. But so as I'm saying here, it's not just soy. It's one of my most favorite sayings when I talk about phytoestrogens. Now, again, that sage is such a strong phytoestrogen that they actually use it in the herbal formula called Estermend, which is designed to support all the function of estrogen. It helps with not just the hot flashes and night sweats, but Estermend also has herbs to help with, female problems and not just the hot flashes and night sweats, but sleep, cognitive function, the vaginal dryness, all the things that estrogen does. Estermend does that, but it uses specific plants. I sat down and I said, what does estrogen do? And I made a list. And I said, what plants do that? And can I put the right plants together to do exactly the same list of things that the hormone would do, but without the hormone for my patients that have had breast cancer and don't want the hormone? Of interest, hops is on that list too. Hops is very good. It's like a very strong phytoestrogen, but hops is actually like anti-cancer, so it's like the perfect herb. So I use a lot of those type of things. And so that's how we can use both the culinary herbs I talked about, but also the therapeutic herbs that we can use to really improve quality of life and help estrogen function better.
Your breast cancer patients, how do you approach them? Do you approach them differently than you treat other patients?
Well, one of the things that when I work with them is we have to understand that estrogen doesn't cause cancer. Bad estrogens cause cancer. Okay, good estrogens don't cause cancer, and really good estrogens actually destroy cancer cells. Okay, now that's a pretty strong statement there, but now we step back and the thing is estradiol, when the body gets done using it, and if it gets done using estrone and even estriol, it can convert it goes down different pathways, it breaks it down to eventually be passed out through the urine or the stool. Well, those breakdown products, one of them is if it goes down, what I'd say 16, it's a big long name, 16-hydroxy pathway, but I'd say think of 16th Avenue, okay? If it takes 16th Avenue, then those 16 estrogens are more likely to cause cancer, inflammation, autoimmune disease. So you don't want a lot of those. All right. On the other hand, if it goes down 2nd Avenue, the 2 hydroxyestrogens don't cause increased risk of cancer, inflammation, autoimmune disease. They're just kind of like, they're weaker. Now, to be fair, the 16s have some value. They're really good for bone density. But there's other things we can do for bone density, like vitamin D. There's no reason to be jacking up 16 when the evidence time and time again tells it causes cancer. So you want to push the body to making the 2 estrogens, and again, that's our old friends, cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, etc. But it's also flaxseed, it's also salmon. You'll make the EPA inside salmon, the fish oil, having a healthy thyroid, exercise. All these things make the 2 estrogens. Now, here's the next step, is where it's really exciting. If you take the 2 hydroxyestrogens and you give them enough B6 and folic acid and B12, you turn them to 2-methoxy or 2-ME, 2-me estrogens, okay? And the 2-ME estrogens actually destroy cancer cells. They cause apoptosis. They tell the cell, you don't belong here, you're supposed to die, and the cell programs itself to die. So we were actually designed to that we can make less dangerous and actually anti-cancer cells. We can make our own chemotherapy. And I've done this with patients. I've taken people that have had, lesions and cancers and put them on massive amounts of actually, if you don't eat cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, and Brussels sprouts, you can take what? Indole-carbinol or DIM. Those 2 substances both of the active parts that are inside those foods that make the good estrogens. You can take those and you'll make all of a sudden a test of before and after. You can do urine test or blood test to measure which way the estrogens go. And we put them on that, and instead of making tons of 16 like they were last month, all of a sudden now they're making tons of the 2 hydroxys. And then I give them lots of B12 and folic acid and B6, and we make the 2-methoxys, and they're like, their lesions shrinking and going away. And I'll never forget one I had. She went back to the doctor after working a few months in this, and the doctor goes, well, maybe the first thing was wrong. Maybe the first X-ray and the first scan and the first biopsy were wrong because, they couldn't admit that, and it's not just me. A lot of docs out the country have been doing this for years. They just, really push 2-hydroxylation, really push methylation, and you help the body make its own chemotherapy. Now, you can buy 2-methoxyestradiol, but my understanding is it costs a small fortune. So I'd rather have you make your own. So again, that's one of the most interesting things about estrogen is making sure that it's safe. So then on top of that, what I did is I said, okay, if I'm going to make an estrogen, if I'm going to make a formulation that is designed to help with estrogen deficiency symptoms but not cause cancer, what am I going to use? So I picked herbs that actually have been documented to be like anti-cancer. Like I recently added Centella asiatica, which is gotu kola, which has a tremendous amount of research on anti-cancer. Hops is inside there. So hops both gets rid of the symptoms and is anti-cancer. Okay, Dong Quai doesn't cause any cancer. What else we have? Even some of the Pararia, one species in America is called kudzu, and red clover, which is actually used in certain anti-cancer formulations. All of these have properties that can actually control the proliferation and the transition of cells into cancer and stuff like that, documented anti-cancer properties. So I chose herbs that, number one, improve the quality of life and make a woman feel better, and number two, I made sure that they don't stimulate cancer growth, and they can actually tell the body to quit doing it. So there's many herbs you can use to help stabilize vasomotor symptoms, but you want to use the ones that, as a side effect, decrease risk of cancer. And so that's what Estromen was designed, because it was designed. It's a vegetarian formulation, but it was designed specifically for that. And because of the controversy about soy, because some people are nervous about soy, and some people are afraid of soy now because of some of this bad press, because there's been a couple studies says, well, actually, we're not sure if it does or doesn't. I basically took soy out of the formulation last year because it's just not worth the anxiety it caused. And to be quite honest, I can do a lot more with some of the other herbs like Centella and Pararia and Trifolium than I can with soy. So I took the soy out of the formulation, and it's working great. Estromen can be used instead of hormone replacement therapy, or if you're on hormone replacement therapy and it's not working well enough, instead of jacking your levels up real high and getting yourself in trouble, take Estromen and it'll clean out the rest of the picture. That's why I put these together. This goes all the way back to when you first asked me in the early 90s how my practice changed, and my practice changed. I've been trying to find ways of making hormones work better by what I call hormone-specific formulations, a formulation that's very specific to that condition. And estrogen is one of the first ones I designed. It was just for that, because so many women could not take estrogen. They were miserable. And I wanted to give them safe anti-cancer herbs.
That's important. I think estrogen, like you were telling, has some controversy, but I think when it's used appropriately, it can help patients, and that's kind of what we do here at the pharmacy with the bioidentical hormone replacement therapy too, is like we try to use a natural estrogen-based hormone, like a yam-based hormone, to help them feel better. But
yes,
as long as you're using the kind of phytoestrogens that are pushing you towards, like you said, second AB versus 16th AB, then you're okay.
Yeah. And that's typically what I'll do is I'll have patients that are on, like what you provide, the bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, and then I say, okay, that's the first step. Now let's make sure when your body's done with it, it doesn't go down the wrong street, And then we teach them, again, they don't have to always eat cabbage, cough, or broccoli. They can eat flaxseed. And the other thing I do is I often encourage people to take fish oil. Well, if they're taking fish oil every day, the EPA in the fish oil, remember, fish oil has both DHA and EPA. If they take EPA every day, then that EPA is pushing them down the right way and can help them make the less toxic estrogen. So that can be very beneficial. I mean, there's so many reasons to eat fish oil because of because of its anti-inflammatory, it's cardioprotective, it protects the nervous system and all. But one of the other important reasons is it helps your body make the safe estrogens. So I really like that,
Yeah. Well, and when I was actually in my prep for my bodybuilding competition, I used tons of fish oil. I used up to 3 grams a day of liquid fish oil, and because it helps with the fatty acids, it helps the nutrients get into the cells better. Makes the cell membranes more flexible and transports the nutrients into the cells. So you were absorbing the nutrients that our body needs more efficiently by increasing our fish oil intake.
You're absolutely right. In fact, remember I said in the very beginning, I said I'm on that one webpage I talk about, foundations for hormone health, and I said healthy diet. Well, right after I talk about some of the foundations that are important is you need to be on a fish oil for the exact reason you just mentioned. It helps the cell membranes become fluid, helps those receptors, those doorways stay more open as well. And then I say you should be on a good multivitamin. You don't have to be extreme, just a good regular multivitamin to make sure we're not missing any nutrient. Instead of lining up 20 different bottles of vitamin A, B, C, D, work your way down the line, just take good multivitamin. And then, and many times they should, many patients do better if they take like a probiotic to keep their digestive system going, because a lot of the inflammation and toxins in the body come because we're not digesting properly. So I call those the foundations of health, the fish oil, a good basic multivitamin, and probiotics. And I find that if you take care of that, then it works. It's funny because I say that how herbs and hormones work are kind of the same, Like an herb or a hormone can go to the cell and they'll say to the cell, do this. Make a neurotransmitter so I can think better. Make collagen so my skin looks better, And the cell may say back to that herb or to that hormone, well, I'd like to, but I don't have any, zinc, chromium, beta-carotene, vitamin C, or B12. I think they're on back order, And so the cell can't, and we understand back order, so the cell can't do what's told to do. So the cell needs all those nutrients as well. You can't take a body that's deficient in B vitamins and give it hormones and expect it to work better, because the hormone's going to go to the cell and say, do this, and the cell's going to say, I can't do that. I don't have the B vitamins I need to do that. And it's just going to frustrate you, make things worse and stuff. So you'd be surprised how many people get better when they just start taking the foundational therapies like we just talked about.
I actually had Lucinda on my show, so she talked about that, and she also added vitamin D to the 3 foundations. With the growing data for vitamin D, she felt it was important that we add that. So yeah, I definitely think that is a good basis. And do you have a recommendation for a particular brand of multivitamin? Because patients ask me that all the time, which brand do I prefer? And is there one?
Well, I use a lot of Douglas Lab stuff because they're the company that I trusted with making my formulations when I first made them for my own clinic, and now they're actually sharing them around the world. And they have one called, they have an interesting new one which I really like. It's called Ultra Preventive 2 a Day. Because many of these high-grade vitamins, you have to take 4 to 6 of them a day to get the full spectrum. But what they did is they made one that has just enough of everything you need to get to give you a good therapeutic dose of a vitamin, and they put them inside tablets that are easy to swallow as well. They don't kind of get stuck in your throat and stuff like that. And that's going over really well. My patients like that, and I'm seeing that. I was asking them the other day, I said, how's this going? They said, man, docs around the country just eating this up because the patients like it. It's like just 2 of those a day. You get all the nutrients you need, and that's working quite well. And then, of course, they have lots of different fish oils and stuff like that. But that's pretty good. If people need intense nutrition, then I use Ultra Preventive 10, which is 6 a day. And those are the ones that you realize they've been eating microwave burritos for years, and you got a little bit of homework to do on them to get their nutrition up. So made something a little stronger, but I'm finding more and more, switching people to the 2 a day is really nice. Take one in the morning, one at noon. I really discourage people from taking any B vitamins after lunchtime because they can disrupt melatonin. B12 is one of the best things to do to knock down your melatonin.
Can't sleep.
If you want to stay up all night, just take B12 and there goes your melatonin.
All righty. Why don't we talk about progesterone? Are there any diet choices that can help with progesterone?
Well, I've kind of looked high and low and tried to find some dietary herbs or foods that would actually raise progesterone. And there's no real evidence of that. But the evidence that is very clear is that in order for the body to make progesterone, it needs an awful lot of beta-carotene, not vitamin A, but beta-carotene. This is especially important for younger women with PMS issues, etc. And the second half of a woman's monthly cycle is a piece of tissue that they call the corpus luteum, which means golden body. And it's called that because it's kind of yellowish looking and because the body concentrates beta-carotene there. Imagine all of a sudden having to make really high amounts of progesterone for the body during the second half of the monthly cycle. That causes a lot of biochemical process to go on in that tissue, which can actually cause, oxidative stress. So you need an antioxidant. And the one the body is using for that is beta-carotene. And so sometimes I'll put them on a beta-carotene supplement, and then we'll see that will change their monthly cycles pretty quickly. Or I'll just have them eat foods rich in beta-carotene, such as carrots, yams, pumpkins, winter squash, and apricots. But that's the best evidence we have now is how diet can influence progesterone, with the exception of saying across the board, progesterone production is very dependent upon antioxidant control. It's a process that, remember, making progesterone is like early in the pathway for the body. Making the testosterone and estrogens down the line, but making progesterone is real close to the front, and there's a lot of oxidative stress. It's kind of like, the engine up there is getting a little too hot, making all this extra pregnenolone, progesterone, and the body needs antioxidants. If you don't have enough antioxidants, it can do that. Like a very popular antioxidant we know about is glutathione, right? Well, there's an interesting study where they took corpus luteum cells and they put them in a solution that, had all the proper nutrients, including glutathione in it, and it could just keep making progesterone. Then they put it in something and they took out the glutathione, and it could no longer make progesterone. And then they took it and put that same tissue back inside, and it could make it. So glutathione, obviously an antioxidant that the body makes from proteins, is important as well. So the best thing you can do for progesterone is a high antioxidant diet. And I've actually seen that clinically to make quite a difference in a number of people. If that doesn't work, like the same with thyroid, I say, well, let's try antioxidants, beta-carotene, really, high like this for a while. Maybe even put them on a little bit of N-acetylcysteine so the body can make glutathione. If that doesn't work, then we put them on progestamend. Progestamend has those herbs that actually stimulate the body's ability to make progesterone, and some of the herbs also kind of mimic progesterone so that the body can feel calm and like it has progesterone until it's able to get the progesterone levels back up.
Now, if someone is having problems with low progesterone, what are some symptoms they would feel?
Well, think of progesterone as the calming, soothing, quiescent, anti-inflammatory hormone, okay? Just as, it's very calming. Like, for instance, you've heard of different neurotransmitters. I'm sure listeners have heard of different neurotransmitters, and we've heard of serotonin. Well, serotonin is estradiol promotes serotonin, okay? Well, progesterone mimics GABA. It's called a GABAergic, or it mimics GABA. GABA, to understand what GABA is like, think of beer, okay? Think of alcohol. Think of, because alcohol actually mimics GABA. It helps the body relax. Of course, it has side effects, but also different drugs like Valium and some of these benzodiazepines, they're basically GABA mimetics. Am I right in that, right, Dr. Pharmacy?
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is the herb that the progesterone actually acts like GABA. It's very calming to the body. So when the GABA, when it's not working, then there's more inflammation, agitation, anxiety, and there's more miserable symptoms like the PMS. Many times PMS is because of low progesterone, because it's not calming and soothing to the body. So some of this symptoms like anxiety as well, sleeplessness. So think of progesterone as the calming, soothing, relaxing hormone in the family. And when that's low, you have anxiety, agitation, and inflammation.
Okay, so then going back to the estrogens, then what are some symptoms they would feel if their estrogen is low?
Well, remember, if we know the estrogen helps with serotonin function, and helps, that tells it helps with brain function. So one of the symptoms, besides the, hot flashes and night sweats and the vaginal dryness, some of those symptoms that we associate with estrogen, neurologically, low estrogen is associated with decreased cognitive function, memory, and more specifically, it has to do with an advanced type of memory called associative learning, where you associate different things. Like, for instance, if someone's talking to you and they go, oh, yeah, when I was at the mall, I saw, and they can't remember the name. That's because they can no longer associate that person with their name. Or they're with you and they say, can you hand me that, what do you call that? And you go, a pen? Because that's associative learning. And so low estradiol is associated with decreased associative learning. They can't finish sentences. They lose their words quite a bit, and they really do poorly in crossword puzzles, as you can imagine at that point in time. So that's one of the most strongest neurocognitive things, And also, of course, the serotonin helps with mood, so there's a high incidence of depression and this type of stuff. So it can become a vicious cycle where their mind's not thinking as sharp, and they get more depressed, and it can really then affect their mood and their behavior and this type of stuff. So So it's important to understand that, and it's so easy to recognize that and turn around, and there's herbs that can do that. That's why I switched to using, I use, a lot of the herbs I use in estrogen. People look at this and they go, is this for the brain? Well, yeah, kind of, because I use like bacopa and gotu-kola, which are two of the most valuable herbs as far as memory and cognition. Because that's what estrogen does. It helps with memory and cognitive function. Now, here's of interest. I do not use gotu-kola. I do not use ginkgo, because ginkgo can also cause vasodilation, and the last thing you want to give a woman with vasomotor symptoms.
Right.
Right, and I found out that when I tried that years ago, and they were getting hot flashes, they were getting miserable, they were coming in beet red, and I'm going, whoa, can't use that stuff, So I switched to bacopa, and I switched to gotu-kola, and I'm seeing some amazing results as far as restoring cognitive function and what I call estrogen mimetics, okay? A mimetic mimics the properties of an herb, but it doesn't have the same dangerous stimulating effects of it. So these mimic it's a functional mimetic, actually. It mimics a specific function of estrogen, which is cognitive, but it's not really an estrogen. So my goal is to mimic cognitive, and it's really quite effective on the bacopa and the gotu-kola.
So now we're winding down to the last one, right? The testosterone. How does diet affect testosterone?
Well, testosterone is one we still have a lot of work to do on here. There's a lot of folklore about how foods can increase testosterone, but a lot of them haven't proven true in the research here. What we are finding, though, in look at literature is, we're starting to see specific herbs that, unfortunately, can actually decrease testosterone function. So those are the ones we're starting to pay attention to. Now I'm talking about culinary herbs at this point in time here. So foods like, what they found was interesting is spearmint of all things, You chew on your spearmint gum, or basically it's from the tea, like spearmint herbal tea. It can decrease testosterone enough that there actually some talk about it may be used in women that have excessive facial hair now, So unfortunately in men it can do the same thing. It can kind of lower your testosterone. So as far as culinary herbs and testosterone, what we're finding is there's some other medicinal herbs that can actually lower testosterone quite a bit as well. But spearmint is the culinary one that can cause the problem, stuff like that. Remember we talked about testosterone, and the problem isn't just it being low. The problem is that many times it can become high. And when it becomes high, it can be very dangerous in women. It can cause those high androgen pictures. And so I have Testacrunch for Women has quite a bit of the medicinal therapeutic herbs that will lower the high testosterone and also increase the proper estrogen, support estrogen function in them. But then in men, if their testosterone becomes unstable, they have the prostate problems. So I have different herbs for the men that help calm down the testosterone and protect the prostate and this type of stuff. But as far as testosterone, remember we talk about adaptogens. Those are herbs that help the body adapt to stress. And some of those are used inside the different things I mentioned, like thiamine. But the most famous adaptogen is ginseng, okay, like from China. But there's also like Eleutherococcus, what used to be called Siberian ginseng. There's also withania, which some people call ginseng from India and this type of stuff. But the different adaptogens, now some of them, not all of them, but some of these adaptogens are actually quite effective in helping the body increase its production of testosterone, and more importantly, helping testosterone function better. It's not just the body's ability to make testosterone, just like the other herbs. It's the ability of the body to listen to it. So I use specific herbs that help increase testosterone production, and at the same time that kind of mimic the production, like some of the herbs that mimic the they kind of mimic Viagra, basically phosphodiesterase inhibitors, like horny goatweed. You've heard the common name for that, Epidemium sagittarum.
That's a good name for it.
Yeah, it's very popular. That'll make an herb famous overnight, called horny goatweed, and it's okay. I want some of that stuff, So Epidemium sagittarum is an herb that actually increases the activity of that enzyme. No, inhibits, PD5 inhibition, and that causes increased testosterone function. Okay, one of the functions of testosterone is sexual function, so we use that for that. Okay, what's interesting as far as neurotransmitters, we see that one of the neurotransmitters, estradiol, is more like serotonin. The progesterone is more like GABA, Well, testosterone is actually more like dopamine. Now, dopamine is the hormone of drive. It gives you like drive and motivation. And of interest, testosterone is the hormone of drive, not just sex drive, but of drive and motivation. So when testosterone is low, people kind of lose their drive, they lose their confidence, they kind of become, there's a lot of increased incidence of what we call social isolation, of people kind of withdrawn from society. You know, I remember one time years ago, I had a woman that had such low testosterone, she just wanted to kind of leave her family and go live up in their cabin somewhere, you know, I mean, literally, they had a cabin, and she's like, I'm going, whoa, I bet your testosterone's like nowhere, and it was like, whoa, you know, so we got her fixed up, and all of a sudden she's like, you know, testosterone is the socialization hormone, and what they found is, even when young children, when they go through the first adrenarche, you know, around 8 years of age, adrenal glands kick in, and the body starts to make more DHEA. Well, DHEA is like testosterone's little kid brother. It kind of does the same thing. Well, DHEA causes increased social behavior, so that's why when a child turns 8 years of age, you see they start to pull away from mom and dad and want to hang out with their friends more and get more socially active. So think of testosterone in the big picture. It's the socialization hormone. It gets you to interact with people, and it helps you with that. It also helps with cognitive function as far as linear processing, not side to side like estrogen does, associative, but linear. Step A, B, C, D, E, F, G, go down the line. That's the testosterone. And then when people's testosterone is low, they go, I think I have adult attention deficit disorder. Well, you don't just get attention deficit disorder when you're like 55 years old, Tom. You know, it's like, that's called andropause, okay? You know, in an andropause, when testosterone is low, you can no longer do the linear processing. You can't, like, the mathematical skills get bad. You know, if they were doing the checkbook, they'd be in trouble right now because they can't add and subtract anymore because it takes linear processing. So helping testosterone does that. And dopamine helps some of those same things too. So of course, one of the herbs I use inside there, Bucana Princess, velvet bean, actually has L-dopa in it to mimic that part. So like the other herbs, I use some herbs to increase testosterone production, like Tribulus terrestris and some of these other things. And then I also use specific herbs to kind of mimic the function of testosterone to make it work better or to, you know, work with it synergistically. So that's how we use Testagain for. It's called Testagain. You know, there's one of my friends he called it Testagain. You know, for a little.
I was going to say, do people come to you for Testagain for erectile dysfunction or when they're trying to bodybuild?
Yes, exactly. This isn't just something that men in andropause have. Yes, it helps men with sexual dysfunction. It was kind of designed for that. There's a few herbs inside that people go, you got a lot of herbs that help with sex in here, don't you? And I go, well, they help with testosterone. That's something they help with sex, okay? You know, and that's so it's not just it helps with memory and other stuff as well and all that, and mood, so you don't wind up social withdrawal and move into cabins and all that. But it does help with sexual dysfunction. That's what testosterone does. So yes, Testagain is used in both men and women, because women, you know, when their testosterone is low, they lose their libido. They wind up with decreased libido, with the inability to climax, stuff like that. So Testagain is used for them as well, and it's pretty, you know, strong. So we're getting some good results with it. And now, one thing I'd like to say about all these formulations I designed is they've all been redesigned within the past half a year to do something, a couple of things quite interesting. First of all, they're all like 100% vegetarian now. You know, we got rid of the gelatin capsules because we wanted to make sure that other people that want a vegetarian would get that. And number two, instead of having 90 capsules, they now have 120 capsules per bottle, and some of them actually cost the same, and I think a couple cost just a couple bucks more, which is interesting. I didn't realize you could add more and only cost about $2 or $3 more. And the reason for that is because the dosages I found work real good with patients is I have them take what I call the 2-4-2 protocol. They'll take 2 of them a day for 1 to 2 weeks or even longer, depending upon how fragile the patient is. And then they increase the full dose, which is 4. And that's like the restoration stage, and that's when the testosterone levels come up, the estrogen, the thyroid. They really work at 4 dosages, 4 tablets a day, because people want things a little faster, okay? So I start to, in the old formulation, I start to have people, take a little more. It's like, oh, that really works. So I found out more and more. So they take 4, and then when they come to me after 1 or 2 months and they say, you know something, this is working great, I feel good, do I still need to take 4 a day? And I call those the magic words. When you come to me and say, do I still need to take this much, then the apparent answer is, well, probably not, because you've been feeling good for at least a month or 2. And then we drop them back down to maintenance of 2 a day, and they still stay feeling good. So it winds up that the bottle will actually wind up lasting them 2 months when they start to, when they feel better. But it's that restoration stage, and it reminds you, because in the old days, looking at adaptogens like ginseng, you know, you would actually give a little dose in the beginning to make sure that you didn't overstimulate the person. You know, you don't want to give them all these powerful herbs and they burst into flames in front of you, you know. So they give them a low dose, you know, and then they'd give them the full dose, the restoration, so they'd feel better and go, oh, test again, you know. And then you bring them back down to maintenance and they stay feeling good. So all of the formulations have been redesigned that way. The Estamen, Progestomen, Thyromen, Testagain, the Testaquench for women, Testaquench for men, the Adrenal, all these have been designed for the 2-for-2 protocol, and we're seeing that it's doing great. And it's making it a little easier on people to stay healthy without, you know, having to take so many pills. Get them feeling better, then put them on maintenance dose, and that's someone's really excited to finally get back out inside this. So you'll see that's a big change that took place if any of you have been watching these formulations.
That makes sense. Start low and go slow, and then drop them down and use the minimum dosage that's going to be effective.
Absolutely, yes, exactly what I did there, you know. And as you said, it's pretty obvious, but I wanted to get some experience behind it, and now we're pretty excited about this new changes we made. And 100% vegetarian doesn't hurt either, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Dr. Collins, you've covered a lot in this time, and I appreciate you sharing all of your knowledge. You know, if people would like to hear more from you, where can they get more information?
Well, my primary website is yourhormones.com, which, you know, yourhormones.com. Your hormones, you know, what's important in life is your hormones, right? .com. Yeah. I have some other dedicated websites. There's one like Thyromen, Estamen, Adrenal, but Your Hormones is the main one. You can go to that site. At the bottom of that page, obviously, we have the contact us link at the bottom of every website, web page. And you can click on that, and you can email me there. Or we even have my phone number and address there if you feel like write me a letter or Collins, etc. And my private email address is jcollins, JCOLLINS, @yourhormones.com. And so I have people, you know, all around the world, you know, call me or email me. I like email better because it gives me time to make sure I can get back to you if I'm not with the patient, you know. These formulations are available in different parts of the world. Like if you know, Douglas Labs actually has satellite distribution placed in different parts of the world, not in the whole world, but different parts. That's why I get people calling from other countries. But yeah, drop me an email. Go to the websites and study them. I think you'll get a lot of information. I'm really education oriented, so there's a lot of information on those websites. And then after you read that, you can ask me a specific question. We'll help you with it. Okay?
Hey, so I hope you enjoyed the show. That was Dr. Joe Collins from yourhormones.com. All the links and resources mentioned today are in the show notes at drAnn.com/006. And Ann is spelled ANH as in home. While you're there, remember to jump on the Food as Medicine VIP email list. You'll get my free gift, the Clean Eating Rules. It's my #1 guide for how to eat to lose weight, improve your biometrics, and get more energy. You'll also get my pearls from the show. If you're anything like me, you're a multitasker, and you're probably listening to this while driving, while doing your laundry, walking the dog, and you really don't have time to be jotting down notes of the show. So I've taken the notes for you, and by hopping on my email list, you'll get the show pearls. Finally, as a VIP email subscriber, you'll get the occasional love letters from me, emails sharing some of my favorite recipes and products, upcoming events, new information that I've learned, and other goodies. So go to drAnn.com and enter your name and email address. Did you like this episode? Then tell us and leave us a review and tell one of your friends, because we need more people to hear the Food as Medicine message. And when you leave a review, more people will be able to see what the show is about and decide to listen in. We've got plenty of great guests coming up, so stay tuned. Thanks so much for stopping by, and until next time, remember to eat consciously, because the world needs a healthy and vibrant you. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to this channel and share it with your friends, because we need more people to hear the Food as Medicine message. And make sure to head over to drann.com and sign up for free updates because I share some insights in my email updates that I don't share anywhere else. And before you go, don't forget to leave a comment because I absolutely love hearing from you.